Welcome to the 6-Month Memoir. I'm Sean.
I'm Miley.
And today we're talking about what to do with your manuscript once you feel like it's in a place where you want to share it. You know, maybe you finished the first draft and you're just itching to get some feedback, or maybe you're in the middle of your revisions, or, wherever you're at in the process. I think at some point we all want to begin getting some feedback, sharing it with other people just to see what kind of a response do we get. And so today we're going to talk about the various points of when you do that, who you want to share it with, because I think it's important that you don't share it with the wrong people at the wrong time.
Yeah, because it can be really discouraging because you might not get the feedback that you're hoping to get, and then you can be like, oh gosh, why did I do this?
Yeah.
This is not good.
Yeah.
Whereas I think if you can choose wisely who you're giving it to, this part of the process can be super, super helpful for making your manuscript the best it can be.
Early on, when you're just in the middle of writing, you have this urge to share. You just want to be careful that you share it with people who are only going to be encouraging, because there's no point at that stage of the game during the writing of the first draft to get feedback that's too critical. Feedback that will discourage you, right, that will keep you from moving forward. Because as you know, keep writing, right? Like when you're in the middle of your first draft, the main thing you want to do is just keep writing. So be careful about the kind of feedback that you get early on, and just make sure that you're sharing it with someone who is going to be encouraging and whose encouragement will keep you writing.
We already have enough negative voices in our heads that keep us from the page. So we want to minimize that as much as we can, especially when you're doing your first draft writing.
Yeah.
But then after that draft is done, maybe you've done a revision. I don't know actually that I would hand it to anybody in full form until you have done somewhat of a revision, because then you have a better sense of what you're looking for from readers, what kind of feedback you want. To hand somebody just what we've sometimes called the vomit version or the vomit draft, to hand someone that is not really going to be helpful for you or them.
Right.
So I would say if you want to share the whole thing with someone, wait and do that after you've done a revision that you feel good about.
So probably the first type of reader that you're looking for is someone that we refer to as a critique partner. Someone who maybe you give them 2,000 or 3,000 or 4,000 words from your manuscript, they give you 2,000 or 3,000 or 4,000 words, and then you take some time, read through what they've given you, and exchange feedback. And this is best done in a group of at least 3, because I think you always want more than one opinion speaking into your manuscript. You could end up with someone who's like hypercritical, or you could end up with someone who doesn't necessarily understand maybe the kind of genre that you're writing. Mm-hmm. And so you just want to be careful about only having one voice speaking into your manuscript. Whereas if you have 2 voices, mm-hmm, and they're both telling you the same thing, then you kind of have this idea, okay, well, maybe that's a part of the story that I do need to address.
Critique partners are so good for helping with maybe the smaller issues, just because they're not going to be reading your whole manuscript, so they might not be able to speak into, does your theme carry throughout, or do I feel like the climax pays off, or they might not be able to speak into that because they're not seeing the whole draft, but they are going to be able to say, hey, you know what, I feel like your dialogue doesn't really work, or I feel like I need a description of this character and you haven't given me one, or, kind of those kind of micro things that it's hard for us to notice on our own, but they're good at pointing out. Yeah. Just as a reader, like, this is just my first impression. This is kind of what I get when I read this section. That sort of feedback is really priceless.
Yeah, because normally those are issues that you can then carry through and apply to your entire manuscript. So it can be really helpful to have someone who knows what they're talking about give you feedback on 3,000 or 4,000 words, because you can then, maybe they talk about pace, maybe they talk about repeating words, maybe there are things that can come up in that small section that you can then integrate throughout your whole manuscript. So consider critique partners as a way forward once your first draft is done and you've maybe done one revision. Critique partners also can be great just for helping you become a better writer in general. You're looking for things in their work that don't work. They're looking for things in yours. And so it can help you create better habits, better writing patterns, and that can be something that you take forward with you. So, sometimes people will find critique partners and they'll work with them for years, just on different projects, whatever they're currently writing, they'll send to each other, getting feedback. I had 2 writers who I worked with for, I don't know, maybe 9 months or so, where we were meeting every 3 or 4 weeks, sending each other a selection of around 3,000 words, and then just digging into the work and saying, hey, this is where I think you could get better. This is something that I think you should try.
Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing that you can benefit from in having critique partners is you can learn from things they do really well.
Yeah.
They might do something in their manuscript that you're like, wow, I could implement that in mine. Mm-hmm. So it gives you new ideas too.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I think you can definitely reap benefits from just seeing what other people are good at.
Yeah. No, I like that. The next type of feedback that you might want to be getting, the next person you might want to share your manuscript with, I would say comes when you've gotten to the place where it's pretty polished. Maybe you've worked with critique partners for a little while, you kind of worked your way through your manuscript or through a portion of it. You now have a draft that you feel pretty good about, and you're thinking, okay, what's the next step? This is when you want to look for some beta readers. And again, I would probably look for 2 or 3. And when you're choosing beta readers, there are a couple things you want to keep in mind. You definitely want to choose readers who normally read the genre that you're writing in. Yes. So don't, if you're trying to get feedback on memoir, you don't want someone who only ever reads murder mysteries to be reading your memoir.
Right.
Like, it just isn't they're not going to know what to look for. They're going to be a little lost, and their feedback is not going to be applicable to what you're trying to do. So choose readers that normally read in that genre.
Also, you want to choose readers who are mindful readers. So who can explain to you what it is that they're feeling as they're reading it, or what it is that's working for them or what isn't working for them. And that takes a special skill. I think there are a lot of people who are mindful readers, but it's locating people who can do that and then write it out on your manuscript and help explain to you what it is that they felt like you did well or you didn't do well. And I think actionable points, like using actionable language, like I could use more description in this scenery, or things that you can then go in and make changes to.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to beta readers, normally this is not a paying situation.
No.
Like, normally these are just readers who maybe friends, maybe people you've met in the Stories Between Us community, and you want to exchange a favor. Hey, you read my book, I'll read yours. Now, there are websites that you can go to pay for beta readers, but normally you don't have to pay for a beta reader. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Once you've done that, once you've had your beta readers, you've gotten your feedback, maybe you still feel like your book needs a little bit more attention, right? If you're thinking of trying to publish it, maybe try and go traditionally. So you want to make sure it's just as top notch as you can possibly get it. Another option that you have is to go with an editor.
So when it comes to editors, that normally is something you would pay for. And you want to make sure that you're getting the type of editing that you want. So, there are content editors who are going to read the whole book and then give you feedback on things like pace, structure, characterization, development of themes. Like, we're talking big picture items that will really help you get a good feel for if there's any major work that you still need to do, or even how you can kind of fine-tune things to make your story as good as it can get. There's also copy editors who are simply going to go through and look for errors, proofreaders. So just make sure that you're getting the kind of editing that you need, because proofreading generally is not something that you want unless you're going to self-publish. You don't have to hire a proofreader before you query agents,
right,
before your agent submits to editors. Like, that's normally not something that you would need to pay for. However, if you are self-publishing, you definitely want to pay for a proofreader, because you don't want all kinds of errors coming through in the work. And then your reader's thinking, wait a second, I love this story, but I can't get into it because, they keep mixing these things up.
One side note I would say is if you are particularly bad at grammar, punctuation, spelling, that sort of thing, it might be worthwhile getting a proofreader, just because that can be distracting if you're sending it to agents or if you're sending it to others. But that's if you just know this is like, I am horrible at this. I would do it. But otherwise, I think for most of us, we've got a pretty good handle on those things, and so that's not an issue.
Yeah.
It's not something you would need to attend to if you're going to do a query.
So we're not going to go into this publishing side too deeply, but obviously once you have a manuscript, maybe you've worked with critique partners, maybe you've had some beta readers, maybe you've even paid to have an editor look through it. Now you want to go for traditional publishing. So we're talking about querying agents. And as you get closer to that stage, I would highly recommend going to janefriedman.com. She has all kinds of wonderful articles and information on what to do with your manuscript once you feel like it's ready to be published.
So that's it. You've got a manuscript. Now these are the steps to take afterwards. Hope that's helpful for you.
If you have any questions, just go ahead and leave them in the comment section in the community, and we'd be happy to address them.
Till next time.
Keep writing.